to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Got another great show lined up for this week. I know you'll think so after viewing it. James Vandenberg, the former Hawkeye quarterback, will be joining me here in just a little bit, followed up by David Eickholt from Hawkeye Insider and talking recruiting again with David's cohort from HawkeyeInsider.com, Sean Bock. So full and rich show, came off a bye week. The Hawks go to Wisconsin this Saturday. Tough game. The Badgers are 4-3 after beating Purdue, who beat Iowa the week before. So Iowa coming off this bye week, going into Wisconsin at 6-1. So that being said, as you can see, I've located my friends Craig and Stacy Schroeder with Fight with Flash Foundation via Facebook page or fightwithflash.org. So much to talk about. Exciting times with the Schroeders. You had an online auction last night for the bourbon. It was here. It passed. Craig's going to update us on that. Stacy, you're going to update us on that fantastic trip you had to Colorado. Go to Facebook, check all those pictures out. Craig and Stacy, you're both beaming for obvious reasons. Give me a snippet, Stacy. Great Colorado trip?
It was awesome. Yeah, so much went on, and a beautiful, just a chance to get together with a company out there to spread our message share our story about Austin and about Win the Day, and just hear too from them on what they're doing and trying to do something similar.
Fantastic stuff. Great. And again, great pictures. I can't wait to hear more about it. Again, go to DaveO'HaraSports.com after this show and go over there and watch our full web exclusive video. Craig, great auction last night online?
Awesome auction. I'll save the good news for the web. So
I love it. So Craig, Stacy, thanks again. We look forward to catching up with you online after this show at DaveO'HaraSports.com. And thanks to you for tuning in. And we'll be back with more James Vandenberg in just a few moments. Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. As you can see on the screen, I've located my buddy James Vandenberg, former Hawkeye quarterback, now part of RBC Wealth Management, CorridorInvestmentGroup.com. James, as always, thanks for joining us. We got to get to it right now. We got big business at hand Saturday, 11 a.m. kickoff, a little pre-Halloween, so October 30th, 11 a.m. kickoff on national TV, ESPN. Go to Madtown, face the Wisconsin Badgers. James, the Badgers are 4-3. Hawkeye 6-1 coming off a bye week. Oh, by the way, all Wisconsin did last week was go to number 25th ranked Purdue, who had the week earlier beaten Iowa at Kinnick Stadium during homecoming 20-47. Wisconsin just goes to Purdue and beats them 30-13. So, as you and I talked about last week, yeah, it's nice that Iowa had a week to prepare to get ready for Wisconsin, but this is no slouch, James. Going to Madison, you know what that's like.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, I'd say it's like a conversation we've had. You don't want to play the Hawkeyes backed into a corner, and I would say the same can be said for the Wisconsin Badgers. They're a good football team. This is going to be a slugfest. This is going to be physical.
Yeah, it's going to be a true fall classic when you talk about smash mouth football. Both teams want to run the ball. Both teams have had issues with line play, a defensive line or offensive line. So you're going to have the running backs in the offensive line of Wisconsin, and you're going to have the defensive line of Iowa, some of the holes they've had, and see if they can shore that up after Purdue the week earlier. I'll tell you, James, you're right. And then Iowa's going to try to do the same thing on offense that Wisconsin's going to try to do to Iowa. So you hit the nail on the head. So take us into QB1's helmet again like you do each week, you being the former Hawkeye quarterback. Coming out of a bye week, you've experienced that before in your playing career at Iowa, especially when you come in off a loss. What's that like between the meeting room again with Spencer Petras, the quarterback, with Brian Ferentz, the offensive coordinator, Ken O'Keefe, quarterback coach, and Kirk Ferentz, head coach? What's happening there, James?
Yeah, no, bye week, I mean, a lot of guys are getting a little rest. They're getting healed up. That's not necessarily the QB, but there's a lot of guys who can take the 5 days off and just let their bodies rest. I mean, mentally, you get a whole nother week of prep. And so you get a head start on Wisconsin because you just get more time. And so they're probably a day ahead in their preparation this week, just because that tends to how it goes. But, Wisconsin's kind of like Iowa. They do what they do. I don't know if we uncovered any crazy gyms over the weekend, even though they won. I mean, they kind of play good fundamental football, and you got to beat them. So, I mean, they're a day ahead in their prep and starting to get rearing to go, I'm sure.
Yeah, so you bring up a couple of compelling points when you talk about guys who are similar in their mindset and mentality in the way of coaching with Kirk Ferentz and Paul Chryst at Wisconsin. And, you got Leonard, the defensive coordinator, is much ballyhooed like Hawkeye's Phil Parker. But then you got Brian Ferentz going to be going against Leonard, a former New York Jets defensive back and spent a lot of quality years playing in the NFL. The job he's done on defense at Wisconsin, they've had some injuries. No excuses, of course, James. But if Graham Mertz can get himself rolling again, saw him play in high school when he was from Overland Park, Kansas, or the Kansas City suburb area where I was living at the time, and I've seen him play in person in high school, and what a splash he made in college football last year. But he's been struggling a little bit. So if you're Phil Parker, then are you going to try to get in this young quarterback's head, or where are we going with all this stuff, James, do you think?
No, I think where you're going is when you get two physical, disciplined teams, it's going to come down to who protects the ball better. And I like us on that end. I don't know a ton about Mertz, but I do know he struggled. And I remember when he came onto the scene, too, because he lit it up that night with 5 touchdowns, I think. But, I mean, this game, whatever team turns it over a couple times is going to have a tough time winning. I mean, we've been predicting our scores the last couple of weeks, and this is like a race to 17. You get to 17, I feel pretty good. I don't think this one's going 42-35.
So are you going Hawkeyes 17-14 or 17-10? What are you picking?
17-10.
Okay, I'll go 17-14 Hawkeyes. Maybe
17-10 Hawkeyes. Sorry, 17-10 Hawkeyes.
I'm going 17-14 Hawkeyes, maybe a 21-17 Hawkeyes, but you're right. I'm going to stay right in that window. So, James, let's do this. Any fond memories, or even if it's a bad memory, memories that still stick out at your time playing in Madison against the Badgers, and if nothing, glaring in Madison, even if it's at Kinnick, what are your thoughts and memories of Wisconsin games that passed for you?
So we haven't talked about this, but in my 5 years, that was right when they were breaking up the East-West, and we went on to a rotation. We didn't play them for 3 years. Mm-hmm. So in my 5 years, I only played Wisconsin twice, and we went up to Madison and emptied out the stadium, so they didn't even jump around. But then they came to Kinnick, and they had a fake punt that absolutely was a dagger in the fourth quarter. And Scott Tolzien was their quarterback, and they ended up beating us. They're not crafty. They just play good football.
Yeah, and that's the key right there. And of course, they have their tradition that they play the song "Jump Around," and they make Camp Randall Stadium shake and rock and roll back and forth the stands. And of course, the Hawkeye wave between the first and second quarter. But yeah, if you can clear out Camp Randall Stadium as you did when you played before they can get to Jump Around, that's pretty good. So I think that's the key, what you just said right there. There are not going to be a lot of surprises. Let me ask you this. Does Kirk Ferentz try to make a move on special teams? When you just mentioned a fake kick, is someone going to try that if you don't get a lot of turnovers? Or do you try to generate some energy, James?
Oh, I mean, maybe. I know where you're going. I mean, I'd probably, to incur the same type of response, I mean, I'm probably drawing up a couple shot plays. I mean, this is where you could see a flicker. You could see something really designed for a certain down and distance to take a shot, like a dagger.
Yep.
Because in a game that's going to be physical and hard to find yards, if somebody can get an easy one or a big swing of momentum, I mean, that goes a long way. So, I mean, I don't expect us to deviate from the plan that much, but I think your thinking's correct. And whether that's special teams or taking a shot or a couple type of shots on offense, I think those are probably in the cards.
I would agree with that. And hopefully Charlie Jones can make a big play on special teams return, or Michael Sleep Dalton can, put a hang time in there and get a punt return fumble from Wisconsin, or again, the D-backs and linebackers playing top notch. If the D-line for Iowa can play well, maybe get a turnover like you said. But I agree with you. I think it's going to be a close, hard-fought game, and it's going to be a big play one way or another, either on special teams or, as you mentioned, one of the defenses getting a turnover. So, James, great stuff as always. We got you down for a 17-10 Hawkeye victory. I'm down for 17-14 or 21-17 Hawkeye victory. So we're right in the same wheelhouse. Going to be fun, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's going to be a fun football game.
So, James, great stuff from you as always. So looking forward to a Hawkeye victory. Look forward to catching up with you next week. James, thanks so much. We'll see you next week, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
My pleasure as always. You're welcome. And thanks to James Vandenberg. So we'll be back with more Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, to close out the show with our two HawkeyeInsider.com guys. First David Eickholt and then Sean Bock. So back with more Hawkeye with me in just a few moments.
In farming, everybody knows relationships drive the industry. And with Merschman Seeds, you've got a friend in the field. Hi, this is Joe Merschman. We're the friend that delivers with extraordinary speed. We're the friend that shares knowledge and innovation. We're the friend that cares about your yields and profits. And we just happen to have the most advanced seed technology in the industry. When you choose the best seed, you also get the best people. Merschman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Hi, I'm Joel from Tice Chevrolet. We've lived through some very interesting times the last few months. Ensuring everyone's safety is more important than ever. That is why we're participating in the Chevy Clean program. At your request, we will pick up your vehicle, service it, and return it after we've cleaned it using the current CDC guidelines. This is just another way to work towards exceeding your expectations. So give us a call and let us show you what it means to be part of the Tice Automotive family.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. As you can see on the screen, my buddy David Eickholt, the HawkeyeInsider.com. See all of David's information on the bottom of the screen along with mine. Interesting to note, David, we lost our winning streak on this show since I started Hawkeye, the TV show, with you and James Vandenberg, our usual suspects.
Yeah.
Hawks lost before the bye, so we lost our 12-0 streak.
I mean, my preseason predictions are still undefeated, so I at least can take that to the bank.
I can also go with you on that too. My predictions are there, but I also wanted to thank you, the viewers. This is our 1-year anniversary. This ends our first year of shows, our 52nd show. So next week will be the start of year 2 with Hawkeye. So can't wait to bring you more great Hawkeye coverage, and we'll start right now with David Eickholt, and thanks again to James Vandenberg, segment before. But David, my goodness.
Yeah.
Bye week, but a lot of discussion. Sure. Man, for a bye week, you talked to Kirk Ferentz today and some of the players for press availability as we record this on Tuesday afternoon. You'll see it over the weekend, obviously. But on October 26th, what was the mood around the facility?
You know, I think they're ready to put the loss to Purdue behind them. I think they know that, you know, everything is still in front of them. And I think Wisconsin right now is going to be the biggest threat to the Big Ten West. And I mean, look, I love ugly football. If you love ground and pound, beat each other up type of football, try to break each other's will, Iowa, Wisconsin is a game for you. I mean, 36.5 over under, Dave. I mean, that's probably as low as I've heard of in a while. But I do think that everybody's sort of refocused. Wisconsin's going to look to run the football. And Iowa, at the end of the day, they know that they got to get that 3.1 yards per carry up. And that's the only way you're going to beat Wisconsin. I know Wisconsin's offense might be down, especially in the passing offense.
Yeah.
Their defense is still among the best in the country.
You know, David, to your point that you could hear it in James Vandenberg's voice, the segment before us here. He was just like, this is going to be a really ground and pound. And, you know, Wisconsin, what they did to Purdue last week.
Yep.
What'd you say? They ran the ball 50-plus times?
About 51 times for close to 290 yards or so. And they have a duo of running backs that they like to use as well. So, I mean, they're going to be able to mix and match some options despite losing a couple of their stars early on. And 17-year-old Braylon Allen's had 3 straight 100-yard games. And in the Big Ten play, that's incredibly impressive to do.
That's truly a true freshman.
Yeah.
And what do they call him? Super freshman, kind of like Riley Mulvey for basketball, Iowa, coming in early.
Yep.
Does Graham Mertz become the Graham Mertz he was last year? That's the other thing. I saw him play in high school in Overland Park, Kansas, in the Kansas City suburb area. Came with a splash last year, first couple games, and he's kind of been unsteady to say the least. Fair statement?
Yeah, I think so. I think part of it, though, too, is they still need to get more skill positions around at wide receiver. I think their O-line, for as great as they are in run blocking, they still have some work to do in pass blocking. But look, you talk about Graham Mertz. He was the MVP of the All-American Bowl back in his senior year. He threw for 5 touchdowns on, I think, 12 completions. So, I mean, he's a guy that knows how to sling it. So I know he had two touchdowns this year to 7 picks, but he can be a threat, I think, on any day of the week, especially if he can start stringing those good days together.
There you go. I mean, talent is talent.
Yeah.
So can he get it put together? David, there are so many big games around the country this weekend, but in particular the Big Ten. You got Ohio State hosting Penn State, number 5 against number 20. You have Michigan State hosting number 6 Michigan, the Battle of Michigan, Michigan State number 8. Iowa moved up without playing this week. That was good. They went from 11 to 9. So let's talk, you and I, then about what's upcoming when you see the Big Ten. Hey, Wisconsin's a tough matchup, going to Madison anytime. Again, talking to James Vandenberg about that. I still look at Pat Fitzgerald, the Northwestern, the following. I don't want to look too far ahead, but I think a lot of onlookers are saying, oh, Iowa doesn't have that much of a schedule left. You go to, Wisconsin, Northwestern, you host Minnesota, Illinois, and then you go to Nebraska. That's not an easy schedule yet, David.
And here's the thing, divisional opponents, Dave, they know each other better than anybody.
Darn right.
And, Northwestern, as bad as they are, I mean, I'll flat say they're bad this year. They still know a way. And Pat Fitzgerald, he will never admit it, but he is more motivated to beat Iowa than I think most teams. But again, Dave, the end of the day is Iowa needs to take care of business. And, I think a big reason why they can move forward is because they know every single goal outside of an undefeated regular season is still in front of them.
Well stated. Let's do this. Yeah, the destiny's in their own hands. You're exactly right. So if they win out, CFP is still in their window. I mean, there are a lot of, you could win the Big Ten West. But let's you and I talk about press conference today. So what did Kirk Ferentz say, or the general vibe? And then you had a nice quotable quote from Kyler Schott.
Yeah, so Kyler Schott basically said, he thinks of trophy games as rent games, and he said rent's due, implying rent's due at Wisconsin to go take home the Heartland Trophy. And I think Kirk, for the most part, is just worried about the Wisconsin offensive line. I mean, they're all, 6'6", 330-plus pounders, among the best run blockers in the country.
Hey, it's Wisconsin after
and
all.
I think when you look at Iowa, the linebackers, they're going to have to play a 4-3. I think Justin Jacobs needs to play a big part. I think Jack Campbell needs to play a big part, especially with Iowa's youth at defensive line and their inability, I think, to really put pressure on the passer. I do think the one thing that works to their advantage, they are very gap sound. And I think when you go up against a team like Wisconsin, you can't break those gaps to try to make plays. You just got to stay in fundamentals and play good, sound football.
You're right on the money here, because James Vandenberg and I talked about in a segment before about Jim Leonhard being a former NFL player, a good player, now the DC defensive coordinator at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
What a job he's done over the years, like Phil Parker at Iowa. Brian Ferentz, too, another young guy, offensive coordinator. Be interesting to see him and Leonhard square off. But if you would, give us an injury update as well. So Kyler Schott is playing.
He's
the
good.
Offensive line. He'll be fine.
I think the biggest thing, Dave, is Riley Moss is not going to be playing. I know a lot of people are thinking he was going to be able to come back. He will not. Defensive lineman Deontay Craig is unlikely. Cody Ince, they're hoping to get back in the system. He is practicing, but they're not for sure on how big of a go it'll be. And number 2 tight end, Luke Lachey, is planning on playing on Saturday for the most part.
Good to hear. Okay, so good news that way.
Yep.
So, David, let's do this. Your takeaway from Coach Ferentz today, you mentioned he seemed a little very mindful that this could be a game of wills.
It is. And I think, again, when you watch this sort of game, Dave, it's the team that breaks their will first. That's when the team strike. I think you look back to last year, Iowa was a close game for 3 quarters. In that fourth quarter, Iowa, I think wore down that Wisconsin defense, and Tyler Goodson ran, I think, for 120 yards or so. So I think that's just going to be the type of game it's going to be. Right when a team shows a sign of weakness, both these teams are going to be able to attack. And I think they're both incredibly motivated to play against one another, and I think they respect one another because they're basically the same program in different ways.
And it's going to be a mirror game here.
Yeah.
So I got the Hawkeyes either 17-14 or 21-17. James Vandenberg has the Hawks winning 17-10. What do you got?
Yeah, I got Iowa winning. I think they're going to win 17-13.
There you go. Perfect predictions. David, as always, thank you so much. Great stuff as always. We'll catch up with you next week.
All right, thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and thank you. For David Eickholt, I'm Dave O'Hara at Hawkeye. We'll be back to close out the show with another HawkeyeInsider.com guy, Sean Bock. Back with more in just a few moments.
Hi, I'm Joel from Tice Automotive Family. We're living through some of the most interesting and challenging times many of us have ever seen. Knowing who you can rely on is more important than ever. Many of us turn to our families to get us through, and the same holds true here. From our fair, upfront pricing to exceptional service after the sale, we truly want to exceed your expectations. So give us a call or stop by and let us show you what it means to be part of the Tice Automotive family.
Who do you trust to produce the best yield? A seed company that's chasing technology, or a seed company that's writing the book on it? Hi, this is Joe Mershman. Mershman Seeds has been treating soybeans for decades, long before it was commonplace. We're the leader in technology, introducing Mershman Seeds' latest advancement in seed treatment, with an added fungicide to help produce a faster, more even emergence every single time. Who can you trust with your yields? Mershman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. As you can see on the screen, my buddy Sean Bock, another Hawkeye Insider guy, and we can't get enough coverage on this bye week, Sean. I'm telling you, thanks for joining us as always. You see all of Sean's information on the bottom of the screen along with mine. Before I get to Sean, though, I want to let you know that there's a lot happening in Iowa women's athletics as well. The women will tip off Bluter's Bunch next week. They have an exhibition game as well as other games soon upcoming. The field hockey team clipping along number 1 in the country, a share of the Big Ten title. They've got a couple big matches left to play before they can win that outright, but still a lot going on. And of course, the Iowa women's wrestling program recently announced that they're going to be launching as one of the first programs throughout the country in D1 wrestling. Tom Brands has some comments about that. I wanted to play a couple of weeks ago, but we have a bye week, so I want to play a clip right now of Tom Brands talking about the new Iowa women's wrestling program.
The stakes are high for the new coach. We're going to wrestle the best competition in the United States, the best collegiate competition in the United States. We're going to recruit unbelievable young talent that is already winning age group international championships and medals at the cadet and junior level. That's going to be our recruiting pool. Being the first is huge. Being the first is impactful.
Well, Sean, as always, thanks so much for joining us. How's everything going with you?
It's going great, Dave. Nice little relaxing bye week, but, get back at it this week, so it's been good.
Here we go. So let's get right to it. We've got a Wisconsin running back, David Nycolt, and I just talked about him just a few seconds ago, but I'd like you to put a finer point. He had a little recruiting battle going on with Iowa, Wisconsin, even Notre Dame. Let's talk about that. He could have been on this side of the ball.
Yeah, Iowa was the first offer for Braylon Allen, who's out of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, up there in the Badger State. And, it was one of those recruitments that you follow along. You're kind of like, okay, maybe this could come down to Iowa, Wisconsin at the end of the day. But Notre Dame came in there. And it was really interesting to see how his recruitment really developed, because at first he was being looked at as a safety. He was, I think, around like 6'2", 195. And then, a couple gets older, quarantine hits. And before you know it, he's posting these insane workout videos of him doing these squats, doing bench press, doing these deadlifts, and he's looking like a college linebacker at the age of 16. So it came down to Notre Dame, Wisconsin. For Allen, ended up picking Wisconsin. It was a really close battle throughout, and he decided to do the surprise route of not early enrolling, reclassifying to that 2021 class, which you don't really see often.
Did a Riley
in college
Mulvey
football.
for Iowa men's basketball.
Yes.
So he's they call it super freshman, right?
Yeah, and now he's a running back. He went from being a potential safety to a linebacker to a running back. Played running back in high school, but you see a lot of those guys project to the defensive side of the ball, especially in the Big Ten, and he's making a real impact for Wisconsin now on offense.
Oh, yeah, David and I were talking about that segment before. 17 years old. This would conceivably be his senior year in high school. Yeah. So moved it up, and boy, I'll tell you, that is impressive. So let's talk about some of the matchups. You wrote some great pieces, as did David Eickholt, HawkeyeInsider.com, and again, all the information at the bottom of the screen, either on Twitter or social media, to locate your and David's fine work. But you did some great analysis and breakdown by individual positions or offensive line against defensive line or running backs against. So I'm going to step out of the way and let you kind of put some context to this matchup, Wisconsin hosting Iowa this Saturday.
Yeah, I was going to actually do more of a individual matchup type. That's usually what I do, but this is such a weird game where it's it's more relying on the position groups, especially with the way Iowa's offensive line has been playing. Not very good, and Wisconsin's defense, while the offense has kind of struggled, the defense has been one of the best in the country, especially the linebackers. You have Jack Sanborn, Leo Chenal. Leo Chenal is playing like an All-American. I think he had 3.5 sacks or something to that extent last week against Purdue, and was really good, and he's been a really superb all season. And I know Dave mentioned during the last segment as well that there seems to be some concern with the offensive line internally with Iowa, and I think the play this year kind of backs that up. Pass protection hasn't looked very good. Look at Pro Football Focus, and that's definitely a big weakness for them. Run blocking's been a little better, but still hasn't really been there. And Iowa's had to rely a lot on the defense this year to get that good field position, to get that momentum. And they didn't have it in the Purdue game, and that was the ultimate result. And Wisconsin's going to give Iowa a lot of troubles, and they always do, but I think this year's going to be no different.
11 o'clock kickoff in Madison on national TV, ESPN. David and I talked about some of the other big games around the country, but specifically in the Big Ten. So let's you and I just stay focused to this game. And when you take a look at previous segment 1, James Vandenberg and I talked about a big play, either on special teams. Does Charlie Jones get a big kick return? Does the Hawkeye special teams get a extra hang time from Torrey Taylor, and they get a turnover off a punt and a punt muff? Or does the defense, minus Riley Moss, as David just updated us, do they get a big turnover? This is really going to be, to James's point, Vandenberg's point, smash mouth against smash mouth, a mirror image game. So how do you see this, playing down the stretch here? Graham Mertz against Spencer Petras, is one of those guys going to make the mistake?
I think one of those guys need to make that play. You mentioned, one of those guys need to make that extra play to give that team that extra emphasis. And, I think the score total is 36.5, as you guys mentioned before. I'd honestly put it at 25.
Give me your score. What do you got?
I'm saying 13-10, but
Hawkeyes?
I don't know if I could pick a team yet. I might. It's a cop out, but I don't think I can pick a team yet.
Remember, you work for HawkeyeInsider.com.
Yeah, well, remember that. That's not. That doesn't mean I have to pick that team.
No, I'm teasing you. I'm just saying loyalties. But no, you got to call it honestly. And I think I won a close one. I picked by a field goal, or 21-17 or 17-14. I have the Hawks. David had them at 13-10 win Hawkeyes, and James Vandenberg with that 14-10 victory or 17-10 victory. So I think we're all on the same page, Sean. So we'll let us know. Check social media later this week to see who Sean picked. So right now, a 13-10 game. Hopefully Iowa. That's what we're saying. So, hey, Sean, great stuff from you as always. Thanks so much. We'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for having me.
You're very welcome, and thank you for Sean Bock, David Eickholt, James Vandenberg, Craig and Stacy Schroeder, and to you, the viewers, thanks for tuning in. This was Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. That's all from me. Thanks to all of you. And thanks, as always, for staying tuned through the rolling credits here at the end of this program. Please, again, as always, give your attention and your patronage to our sponsors and advertisers who mean so much to this program. Without them, we don't have a show. But again, to the aforementioned guests and to you, the viewers, thanks to all of you, and thanks for tuning in.